Hey there, lovely people. Welcome back to another Writing Tip Tuesday. I'm Sammi, and I'm a writer who likes to help other writers become better writers. This week, I want to talk to you about your criticism type. If you're not the best at accepting critique on your writing, this is going to either help you or make you really mad at me. So I'm hoping it's going to help you, but I will be attempting to call you out on your crap today. Why is criticism important as a writer? For one, it's how you know whether things are working. Because in your own perspective, in your own perception of your writing, things can be working perfectly well. They are doing everything right. But you know everything that's going on behind the scenes of your story. You know everything that is not on the page. So there are things that may not be working or may not be coming across the way that you want them to, that having somebody else's opinion may help you figure out, may help you see how readers are going to experience your story, and maybe it will just help you grow as a writer and teach you something about how you write that maybe you haven't perceived yet. Taking criticism takes practice. Finding the right spot is going to take a while. It's going to take several different kinds of people giving you critique, and it's going to take you responding to that critique differently every single time before you hit your sweet spot. But criticism is an amazing way to grow as a writer and learn more about the craft, more about how other people perceive your writing, and how you can strengthen your weaknesses and highlight your strengths in your writing from then on out. I like to think of your ability to take criticism on a scale from 1 to 10. It's not in the same way that 1 would not be the best and 10 would be perfect. The sweet spot for criticism, I would say, is somewhere between 4 and 7. If you would rank yourself naturally, like I am a 4 at taking criticism. Like, I don't really like to do it, but I know how to perceive it. I don't really like having other people give me feedback. It doesn't make me feel good, but I understand sometimes it'll be really helpful. That's not bad. Or if you're like a 7 where it's like, I like getting feedback, but I also don't always take all of it because I don't want to, that's great. Somewhere in the middle there is exactly where you want to be. So let's talk about the different types of people when accepting criticism. And these are honestly not really in any particular order. They are just in the order that they came to my mind from my personal experience receiving criticism and being a part of workshop groups that gave criticism. So the first one is the one that I identify the most with who I was in the past and sometimes am in the present, which is the defensive one. If you are a defensive criticism taker, you are often the kind of person who believes that everything that you did is right and everyone's criticism against you is wrong. And you'd be happy to tell them why they're wrong. I would rank you a 2, a 1 to 2 on the scale of criticism acceptance. Because if you're gonna hold back your defense and you're just gonna think it yourself, I'll give you a 2. If you for any reason actually bring it up in your critique circle or email people in response to their notes, you're a 1. Don't do that. The next type of person is the people pleaser. If you are a people pleaser when it comes to your critiques, you are often someone who believes that everybody has a reason for giving their critique. And their critique is probably right, and you should take everyone's critique. So you take everyone's critique to make everyone happy so that everyone will enjoy your story because all of these people had these things that they thought you should change. So now you are going to change them because they told you to, and you want it to be a good experience for everyone. You are a 10 out of 10 on the critique scale. You're doing too much. Your story is your story. You should be taking the critiques that you think benefit your story, not just the critiques that people gave. The next type of person is the ignorer. The ignorer is pretty self-explanatory, but if you are an ignorer when it comes to receiving criticism, you probably will, at the most, pretend to be listening when people give you critique, or pretend to look over the notes that people give you. But you have no intention of retaining or acting on any of those notes. You may behave properly in class or in your writing group, but you are not growing. I would rank you a 1 because if you're not taking any critiques, you're not taking any critiques. Just because you're not behaving poorly about it doesn't mean that you are growing from any of the critiques. The next person on my list is the attacker. This is a little bit different than the defensive because you are on the offensive. You are not protecting your story. You are destroying other people's. This is someone who lashes out upon other people's right to critique them. Oh, you don't think that my dialogue is working in this scene? Well, your dialogue sounds like it's the one person talking to themselves the entire time. You have no right to comment on whether my dialogue is working or not. This is not healthy. This is not a good way to respond. Now, I am giving you an example of the absolute extreme. A lot of people who are attackers may not do it outwardly. They may just think, well, I'm obviously not going to take your criticism. You don't know how to do this. You don't know where your commas go. Why am I going to listen to you if you're saying that my sentences are run-ons? I would rank you a 1 to 2 on the scale of accepting criticism. The next person on my list is the giver-upper. Shockingly enough, if you are a giver-upper, you don't take criticism very well. Giver-uppers often don't see their work as something that they should put effort into. A giver-upper is someone who may see themselves as a perfectionist. If you're a giver-upper and a perfectionist, if you don't get your story right on the first try, you may as well have just never done it, and there's no point in continuing on. You don't take criticism well because you don't see it as an opportunity to grow. You see it as an opportunity to address your failures. Not great to become a better writer. If you're a giver-upper, you are a 1, a hard 1, maybe a 0.5. The next person on my list is the narcissist. If you are a narcissist when it comes to accepting criticism, you probably will take people's criticism. You'll take it, you'll think about it, you'll digest it, but then to protect your ego, you won't give the other person credit for pointing out your wrongdoings. This kind of leads to you becoming not the best person to have in a writing group, because when the next set of drafts are spread about and you get your next set of critiques, you don't give anyone credit for when changes are made. You might just say, oh, well, I came up with this idea after thinking about my story for a while, and I thought that this might be improved if I did this. You are an 8 on the scale. You're very close to hitting the right amount of decency when it comes to taking criticism, but because you can't let go of your ego, you are tainting the process and making it so people are less likely to give you helpful critique after they have done it one time and been completely ignored. The next person I have on my list is the art is me. If you are an art is me writer, you probably have a hard time separating people's feelings about your work with their feelings about you. Having somebody give you critique on your creation may make you self-conscious about how they feel about you. If they think that this could be improved, do they actually secretly hate you? If they don't love what you did, do they really want to be your friend? This is a problem because you aren't separating yourself far enough from your creation to be able to grow as a writer and develop your story in a way that it's worthy of. Now, because art as me can have 2 very drastically different responses, I would rate you either a 3 or an 8, because some people can take criticism and they will take the criticism, but it will cause them emotional damage to do so. You're probably an 8. You're taking the criticism, you may be growing from it, you probably aren't, but you have the opportunity to learn something because you're trying to. The problem is you aren't separating your personal feelings from your creation. But if you're someone who won't take any of the criticism and you'll just kind of woe is me about people not liking you because they had some comments on your writing, then you're probably a 3. The reason why you want to be a 4 to 7 on the scale is because you want to have enough experience with it that you know when to respond to criticism and when to ignore it at its face value. Every bit of criticism that you are going to get, unless it's blatantly like, hey, this word is spelled wrong, is going to be subjective. It's all going to be dependent on the person who's giving it, their personal opinions on what they are perceiving and what their past experiences have led them to know, and what that knowledge that they know leads them to perceive from your writing. It's all subjective. So sometimes, yes, you do have to consider the source where you are getting your comments. If you're getting a comment from someone who's never taken a writing course before and you are a senior on the path to a creative writing bachelor's degree, you may not want to take that beginner's feedback the same way that you would somebody who is a peer at your level or even a instructor. But there are different ways to grow and become better in a critique situation. That don't require you to change entirely who you are. It just gets you close enough to that mid ground where you are accepting criticism, but you aren't accepting too much. If you are more of a fighter when it comes to receiving critique, like a defensive person or an attacker, you're gonna want to become more receptive to critique. So a way that I recommend doing this, specifically because I was a very defensive person in my beginning writing courses, is to take a step back. Pretend that you are not receiving criticism on your story. Pretend that you are receiving criticism on your roommate's story. And you just had to go to class for them because they couldn't make it and they needed the notes on this. Take really detailed notes for your roommate whose story this is for them to look at later. That way you won't have that emotional connection that they're going to shank my baby here. They are killing my baby without my permission. Only I get to choose to kill my baby. Killing your darlings or killing your baby is a term for editing. If you are not aware of that, I am not suggesting that you injure actual infants. Taking the step away from your writing and emotionally detaching yourself will shut down a lot of those feelings of defensiveness or protectiveness or rejecting other people's opinions because of who they are and why you feel that your writing is better than theirs. It'll give you the opportunity to actually hear some of what they are saying with clarity. Taking notes is also super helpful for pretty much anybody. If you are an ignorer, take notes and don't look at them right away because you know you aren't going to look at them, but set like a calendar reminder and tell yourself to read those notes a week later. Because you may find something, as long as you're taking detailed notes, you may find something in it that you're like, wow, I might not have thought of that if it weren't for getting these critiques. And you probably wouldn't have. Statistically, you probably wouldn't have because that reader's perception is going to have a lot of differences from your own perception. So their experiences led them to that conclusion, which led you to think that's a good idea. If you are a giver-upper or an art is me person, I want you to put your own feelings aside. The same way that the defensive and attackers are, I want you to not feel connected to your story the way that you do, because your art is not a way to measure yourself. It's a way to measure your art. And your art has a lot of opportunities to grow and develop and become better. By putting all of your value into how other people perceive your art, it takes away from the value that your art can present itself. You can learn so much if you stop approaching your self-worth on whether or not people like your story or whether or not people like you. You can grow as a writer by just doing things that feel right, trying new things, or experimenting with different techniques that may or may not work and getting people's feedback on it. If you are an art as me person or a giver-upper, try and take a step away. Separate your art from yourself and remind yourself your art has no correlation with your personal value. What you want to be perceived as valuable for is what you will be perceived as valuable for. If what you want to be perceived as valuable for is writing, then you should be happy to take critiques. Because that means that you are going to have the opportunity to bring more value to your writing by learning from other people's critiques. You should also pay close attention to when people say positive things, because I don't think you're telling yourself enough positive things about your writing in your own internal monologue. So highlight the notes that say something positive, keep those in mind. And also keep in mind that they are not speaking directly about who you are as a person. If you are a narcissist, start writing people's names down with the notes. For real. Just start writing people's names down next to the thing that they say in class. Or start writing people's names on something when you change it, like make a note, hey, Nick told me to do this. Nick mentioned that this part was confusing, so I tried something new here. Acknowledge the other writers in your group. Acknowledge the people who are giving you feedback. It's gonna be more encouraging, even if it really doesn't matter who said it. If you even say, someone told me that this was confusing, if you get anonymous feedback, someone told me this was confusing, so I wanted to try and put more effort into it. Rather than you taking credit, you're going to create a better environment where more people will be comfortable giving you feedback. And by receiving feedback gracefully, and not protecting your ego exclusively, you will create a community of people that you can call upon later on in life. Hey, I wrote this thing. I'm thinking about submitting it to publishers. Do you want to read it? Sure, I would be happy to give you feedback on that. No matter what type of person you are, when it comes to receiving criticism, keep in mind that only real writers receive criticism. Only people who want to grow as a writer learn and adapt to receiving criticism in groups or from individuals. Only people who want to get better at writing learn how to get better at taking critiques. So even if you aren't quite there into that 4 to 7 range on the scale of 1 to 10, by trying to get better at receiving criticism, you are getting better at being a writer. So any step towards progress and getting better at finding that middle ground is a step in the right direction. And you should be proud of it. And that is all that I've got for you today on how to get better at receiving criticism. I hope you learned something. I hope you didn't feel too targeted, though I did make it so that you might. If you felt targeted, leave a comment down below. What kind of person receiving criticism are you? As you know, I am defensive. I have also been an art is me person in the past, but I cut that one out pretty quickly once I realized that I was doing it. Let me know in the comments down below what your critique style is. And don't forget to hit that like button if you learned something. If you don't want to miss any of my videos, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. I will be back with more videos like this on Tuesdays every week and story study videos every Saturday. So I will be back on Saturday with a story study Saturday for you.